contract number CW95800 with Plenary Infrastructure DC Emergency Declaration Resolution of 2021. Councilmember Shea.
Thank you. This is a multi-year contract with Plenary Infrastructure DC to design, finance, construct, install, and maintain upgrades to the district's street lighting network and install smart city technology components in collaboration with the district's Department of Transportation and the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. The not to exceed price for the term of this multi-year contract with Plenary Infrastructure is $309,032 for a 15-year period of performance. And as all of my colleagues know, that I circulated a rather extensive memorandum on this, but just to hit the highlights, we have more than 75,000 lights of various kinds, inefficient technologies around the district. And we've been seeking a private partner to retrofit these lights since 2016 to get more energy efficient LEDs, to install a remote monitoring and control system, and repair and maintain these fixtures under a long-term performance-based contract. And this contract would achieve all of those goals. On January 24th, the Committee on Transportation and the Environment and the Committee on Business and Economic Development held a joint roundtable on the contract and the associated resolution to authorize the issuance of the bonds. At that hearing, we heard testimony from the proposed contractor, DDOT, DEMPED, several academic experts on this particular kind of P3 contract proposal and on the RFP review process. The committee also heard testimony from the current holder of the district streetlight contract. And so I'd like to just, again, mention the high points of what I've already furnished to my colleagues. First of all, the committees raised questions with DDOT about whether this particular proposal represented the best value for cost for the district. And ultimately, the committee was of the view that, as proposed, it was in fact the best value for the district. DDOT developed a something they called a public service comparator of what this would look like if it were structured as a traditional contract rather than a P3. And DDOT's analysis determined that using their traditional contracting methods, the scope of the work would cost around $431 million, which is $76 million more than the $358 total cost of the project. The current streetlight contractor claims that it would only cost $170 million if we did it in a traditional format. But the cost estimate provided no quotes or other information to support that. And in any event, DDOT pointed out the many differences in a traditional contract and what is being offered here that would more than overcome the claim that there was this better offer. There were issues about change orders. It should be understood that unlike a traditional contract, under this contract, change orders would have to originate from the district or be agreed to by the district, and the scope of those change orders would be limited to scenarios not contemplated in the original contract. Let's say we wanted to have many more lights, something like that. It's a performance-based scheme, unlike our current streetlight contractor. If the contractor fails to comply with the standards laid out in the terms of the contract, including timelines, the district automatically financially penalizes the contractor. The benefits of the contract are unmistakable in terms of energy use and energy savings, light pollution, Wi-Fi access, remote monitoring, and contractor experience. And then, we did talk about district liability for contract termination. Again, under the contract, all the district would be liable for would be the work actually performed and not anything going forward. Only the work actually deployed, not prospective. And I recommend approving this emergency contract. And the reason why it's an emergency, A, it was sent over that way by the mayor, but B, apparently there are a number of items that have to be done to make sure we're consistent with whatever federal financing we might hope to get and other administrative matters, so that we need to approve this on an emergency basis. So I would move the emergency.
We have the measure before us. I see Councilmember Tran White and then Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess to Councilman Chase's point, I see that DDOT claims it will cost 413. I think I heard you say 431, but under the current contractor. And I just got a letter from the mayor about 2 hours ago, circulating saying the contract would save the district $76 million, implying that it would cost $385 million. Just want to know, has the committee had time to thoroughly review each contracts? Who would like, how they would differ from the proposed P3 proposal? I'm not sure of the analysis between the two based on what the mayor said, based on what I'm hearing from the hearing.
Well, I'm sorry, can I answer, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, within Councilmember White's time.
Okay, I can't necessarily account for the change in the numbers as such, but the point about it is it would cost significantly more to do this in a traditional way. And that's ultimately the bottom line here.
I guess for me also the issue of liability on the district's part. We've seen what happened with the Purple Line with the failed P3, and they ended up paying twice for the project. Do we have we analyzed what happens if P3 fails at all? What's the liability on the district?
Yes, and this reference to the Purple Line is really not correct, because the problem there was they didn't get all of their federal approvals, their environmental impact statements, and everything they needed to go. And so it was a great delay, but they didn't have the protections as part of their contract that we have in this contract, namely that, let's say for whatever reason, this thing goes south, all that the district is liable for is any work actually performed. We have no liability beyond that.
Okay. I don't know. I can't see the time. Yeah.
You have a minute.
Okay. And I guess I was trying to get a understanding about the CBE participation from yesterday, and I did learn that a number of CBE participants, but do we know the threshold of what that is in dollar amounts from local minority companies?
I do not, but let me see if I can pull that up for you in the meanwhile. I don't know the actual number.
And if you can send that to me later, if not
Okay.
next minute, for me to analyze.
Councilmember White, are you done for the moment?
Just one last question. Do we get any infrastructure conflicts with this particular budget item in the future, financially?
I'm sorry, council member, I don't think I understand your question.
So there's been a lot of appeal orders as relates to the current contract with MC Dean, as far as I guess it's my item is infrastructure repair. And I know, there's a lot of change orders when it comes to these long-term 15-year projects. I'm not sure if we have looked at additional costs for long-term.
Well, as I said, under this contract, the contractor cannot initiate change orders. The only change orders will have to come from the district or with the district's approval. So
I got that. I'm just trying to understand the process of the district even initiating change orders and cost. So what that means is there a limit or structure in place to how the district would initiate it even in that?
no,
We're over time here.
not that I'm aware of.
Councilmember Bonds, you were next.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Councilmember Shea. I was looking over the benefits as they are articulated in this contract, and I too am very concerned about the potential for change orders, and I know that can certainly increase the amount of payment on this contract. And did I just hear you indicate that you're not sure as to what that might mean?
Well, I can tell you what it means. It means that we would be in control, which is to say, unlike a traditional contract, under the terms of this contract, any change orders would have to originate from the district or be agreed to by the district. And the scope of those change orders are limited to scenarios not contemplated in the original contract. For example, let's say we wanted to have 100,000 more lights or something like that. But rising costs, or whether for equipment or labor, or a determination by the contractor that the terms were no longer sufficiently favorable, those are the kinds of things that they would seek a change order about, and they may not have it. That's all on them. They take that risk.
Okay, and are we talking about change orders that may occur during the construction or the installation, or are we talking about maybe change orders that would occur during the monitoring period? Because the construction period is like 2 to 3 years, or I'll say 5 years, because DC's, I know we say 2, but it's complicated, it seems to me, when we're talking about 37 different A and C areas that will be worked. And I think 3 locations in the city simultaneously. We already are tied up with traffic. So I'm just trying to understand what we're being prepared for. Also, my other question is regarding the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi access, 239 wireless access points. Will they be located in parts of our community that currently suffer with very poor service, such as Ward 8, Ward 7, top part of Ward 5, top part of Ward 4, and maybe even Ward 3, I'm not sure. I haven't heard complaints from there, but it seems like the greater distance you are from downtown, the more of a service problem that you have.
You had a couple of questions. I'll answer the last one first. Octo is going to select the locations. And the focus will be on wards 5, 7, and 8, where the greatest need lies.
All right.
And then you asked me about change orders. The rule about change orders that I described applies throughout the 15-year period. So, okay. And there may have been another question, but I forgot.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a lot of money. It's an absolute lot of money. And we're really creating a mortgage system for the government. And that's what concerns me. We're saying 160 million, and we're going to end up paying 309 million for that. I understand that they are footing the costs, supposedly using the industrial bond process, but still, it's a lot of money, and that really concerns me. But if you are comfortable that we are getting a good return, you're basing it on your reputation, it causes me to be a little more comfortable with it.
Councilmember, you're over your time. Councilmember's time has expired. Councilmember Allen?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. First off, I want to thank Councilmember Shea and her team for moving this forward. I remember sitting in that breakfast meeting, many years ago, as we were looking at some of this technology. So I also, I guess, need to extend my thanks to the DDOT staff that have been working on this for quite some time. This is a big contract. It's a complicated contract. It deserves healthy skepticism and healthy scrutiny. And I really appreciate Councilmember Shea's hard work on that. At the end of the day, though, I also think this is a really good thing for the district. I'm going to focus my comments on one aspect of this. We've talked about, we heard the questions about the purple line. Actually, I'm glad those things do come up, because those types of things are instructive in the ways in which this contract gets written to help protect and safeguard the district's interests. So I don't think those are out of bounds. I'm glad they get brought up, because I think it is a lesson learned that then gets employed and put into practice in what we have in front of us. But let me talk about the maintenance part of this, because I think this is going to be important. There are accountability requirements for maintenance that I've never seen before in a district contract. So for any of my ward colleagues out there, you'll know what I'm talking about. When a street light goes out, what happens? Usually a couple of days go by at least until someone realizes the light's gone. Then if that person has the capacity, has the agency and the wherewithal to go file a 311 and to call their council member, then we start calling DDOT over and over and over again. And then ultimately somebody gets out there and fixes it. That is not a great system. That is not an equitable system, because what it means is you are reliant on those that have agency and capacity to see when something's not working, to then be able to have the ability to go take action. Under this contract, using the technology involved here, the contractor will get automatic notifications anytime a street light goes out, and they have 72 hours to fix it. There are built-in accountability measures for maintenance. Imagine what that would feel like for all your 301 requests. This is what I think is going to be very beneficial about this. Doesn't favor anybody in terms of their capacity, their agency, their ability to call 311, their ability to navigate their council member, and DDOT will be able to monitor that. And if the contractor does not do it quickly enough, they do not meet their maintenance standards, we get to dock them pay. I think this is an important equitable advance. I think at the end of the day, what this contract's going to help us do is that we are going to get new streetlights and infrastructure faster. I think we're going to get better Wi-Fi coverage in areas that need it. And thank you very much, Councilmember Bonds and Councilmember Shea, for pressing why that is important and where it needs to be prioritized. And we are going to get better and more equitable streetlight repairs through this process. So I am going to be voting for this. I encourage my colleagues to do that. And I appreciate all the tough questions and the kicking of the tires that led to what's in front of us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions, so I'm going to try to get through them quickly. One, I'm trying, Councilmember Che, to overcome some skepticism on the notion that we'll save $76 million. I have a bit of experience with P3 contracts on the federal level, and generally the trade-off is either that the private sector partner will assume some risk or that the government cannot sort of pay for the project, and so we will pay more for it over time as it will be sort of amortized. But I'm not sort of understanding. So we're going to pay less money, but what are we giving up, or what are we paying more for in the long term?
Well, we have to look at it, from the perspective of what the current contractor was saying, that we could do this for $170 million, but there are various aspects that are not, first of all, they didn't provide us with any, underlying documents or anything, but there are various aspects about what we're getting that we wouldn't otherwise be getting. And when DDOT factors all of those in, first of all, we would need a variety of contracts, because we would have separate contracts for the maintenance, the installation, and et cetera. And then on top of that, it didn't necessarily include the Wi-Fi aspect. It anticipated a one-to-one replacement of the lights, just simply a replacement, but there are design issues. It didn't have a contractor who was on board for the full maintenance and tie that person's fate with the lights working as they should, because if they don't, they have to come and fix them, and on a timetable, as Councilmember Allen said, or they get automatically docked. We don't have to go after them and say, you owe us. No, we just take it out of what they have. When you add up the various aspects of this, of what it would really cost to do this in a traditional way, that's what DDOT is saying, that 431 million. And I guess maybe the discrepancy there, I think the other council member White brought this up. I think that has to do with the cost is higher because DDOT has some what they call retained costs. But in any event, it's in that range. It doesn't include proactively inspecting the lights. It doesn't, and as I said, it requires that the contractor, we have to put in all new poles, new infrastructure, new everything, and they're responsible for it. So they're not going to, be cheap about it, or
If I could get one more question, and Councilmember Shea, thank you. My understanding is that there's no local hiring requirement for this, first source or otherwise. Is that accurate?
Well, in one sense it is. We can't use the traditional CBEs because we're using some part of this from federal dollars, and the federal government doesn't allow a geographic preference. We have disadvantaged business enterprises, however, which are allowed, and the contractor has indicated that they're going to hire all local subs and workers for all 15 years. So we can't use technically the CBE, but we can use disadvantaged business enterprises because of the fact that we're using federal law, but we're going to come out the same way.
Okay, but with respect to local hiring, so aside from the CBE, resident hiring.
Well, we can't use CBEs, what I'm trying to explain to you, because we're using federal dollars and they won't let us do that.
Right. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about hiring of local businesses like our CBE program. I'm talking about like our First Source program, hiring of district individual residents.
And the contractor has committed to hiring all local hiring, including subs.
Wonderful. Is that in writing?
You know, let me find out about that. I mean, I know we talked about it at length, but I never actually asked that specific question. So, yes, it is. My trusty staff found the document. Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Che. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Councilmember Nadeau.
I think Henderson was before me, but I defer to you, Chairman.
I saw you first, so no,
Okay.
just to Councilmember Henderson.
Okay. Well, I am in support of this measure, and I want to approach it from both my hat as a ward member and as a voting member of this citywide body. First of all, as a ward council member, and I'm going to echo some of the things that my Ward 6 colleagues said, you know, when it comes to constituent services and addressing infrastructure issues that are recurring issues, having a better streetlight system that is remotely monitored, that is automated, these are the things we need to be doing here in the District of Columbia. It shouldn't be that the way that we know when a bulb has reached the end of its useful life is that a resident has to take the initiative to call 311. You know, there are so many other things that we could spend time and energy on in this city. And the more that we can automate our systems and use the technology that's available to improve people's lives, the better. We should be doing that any way we can. So I'll start with that and also speak to this equity issue. We know that some people just don't believe picking up the phone and calling 311 is going to make a difference because in their experience, it hasn't. And so some folks don't. And that means that certain parts of the city don't have the same access as more vocal parts of the city. And that is a huge equity issue here in the District of Columbia. And it's not only here, right? We're not special in that way. But this does address that issue. The status quo arrangement that we have here for streetlights is far from ideal. It's inefficient, multiple contractors doing work without much transparency. And under this proposed contract, which has more accountability and performance metrics baked in than any district contract I'm familiar with, pay for performance also meets an important standard of equitable treatment. Having a maximum downtime for lights and across the board maintenance is a much better substitute for a system that relies on 311. And it makes perfect sense to bulk at a contract this large and for this long of a period. I get that. Looking at examples across the country, government often winds up as the junior partner in a P3 relationship. But what I've seen here, I can say that DC ends up being the senior partner in this deal. So the contract and bond have been in the works for at least 4 years with multiple meetings and roundtables going into its components. I can tell you my constituents have actively participated in this discussion. The level of passion about streetlights in Ward 1 far surpasses so many issues. So in my Ward 1 capacity, I can tell you the people are excited about this. You know, if there are future P3s we pursue, we can now ensure they are held to the same level of proof of work or higher based on what we're doing here. You know, some may miss the romantic look of our sodium bulbs. I look forward to a very near future in which all of our lights are energy efficient LEDs, and the speed with which this contract will get our system fully replaced and up to a state of good repair is also a crucial component. I'm going to support the measure today, and I thank Councilmember Che and her staff for vetting it.
Thank you, Councilmember Nadeau. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Councilmember Che, for your leadership on this issue. I certainly understand the mistrust that some of you all may be feeling about this contract. I definitely had this about a year ago going into, I think, the first roundtable I participated in on this issue. I had skepticism about the scope, I had skepticism about the cost, I had skepticism about why this type of P3, who enters a P3 for streetlights as opposed to, say, a P3 where a private entity is going to gain some sort of revenue off the back end. Many of you might be thinking in an infrastructure context of a P3 as it relates to a highway that may have a toll road attached to it, and then someone is continuously drawing down revenue on those things. I've attended the roundtables, and more importantly, I asked numerous follow-up questions to DDOT. I think I have had like 3 separate briefings with DDOT on this particular issue, and kick the tires as much as I possibly can. When we're talking about 15-year contract and $309 million, I think it's important for us to do that. And I have to say, it is not often in our government where an agency responds literally to each and every question in the way that DDOT has responded. And so I want to publicly thank them for their engagement on this particular issue. We have, I think we've talked to other jurisdictions. We've questioned why some jurisdictions who consider doing a P3 for streetlights chose not to go down that road. And honestly, where it comes down is there are great benefits in the structure. As Councilmember Nadeau and Councilmember Allen already talked about, I think there are residents in our city who don't know that if you want to get your streetlight repaired, you do have to actively initiate something with 311 unless someone from the district happens to be riding by and they notice. So suddenly we have areas of our city that are dark, where crime is being proliferated, and it reduces and then there is this feeling and sense by some residents that they've just been forgotten because their streetlights are off and nobody's paying attention. Add to that the Wi-Fi portion of this, which will greatly add accessibility to public Wi-Fi across. And I think big picture across the board, this really will move the city forward, not just from a climate change and energy efficiency standpoint, but also from an equity standpoint. I also asked questions about, I think I referred to it as how, if for whatever reason we have to divorce our contractor, we have to break up, what does our prenup look like, i.e. the contract, and what do we have to pay on the other side? So I feel very confident supporting this contract today. And I want to thank Councilmember Che for being in the trenches with me on asking some of these and pushing DDOT to answer some of these questions that I did raise over the course of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Silverman.
Thank you.
You just muted yourself.
2 years in. Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So I am going to be voting in favor of this contract today, and I'll admit it is a tough judgment call. I do want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Che, for having, I think, 2 roundtables on this, and for colleagues who attended those roundtables and asked questions that I got to benefit from. And I want to thank DDOT because they engaged with my office and various offices to answer questions. I will say that I'm not in love with P3s, but I don't have a philosophical opposition to them. I know they can be good tools for governments to use, and they are a contract with the government. To use a word we focused on in the breakfast, Mr. Chairman, I think the source of my agita is the cost and length of this contract, because it's for so many years, 15 years, and for so much money. This is what I say, we need to do our part, to make sure this works well. So as colleagues have said, there are accountability and performance measures in place for the contractor, and we need to make sure they're adhered to and enforced. There needs to be robust oversight from both the Department of Transportation and from us to make sure the contractor is meeting the targets, quickly responding to the repair and replacement requests, is actually meeting the DC resident hiring goals, and is not being paid when the lights are out. You know, this is not easy. And I will say in my 8 years on the council, our contract oversight has not been that great. I really appreciate Councilmember White's question about resident hiring. You know, wouldn't it be fantastic if our residents benefited not just from having our lights work and meeting climate goals, but we actually got jobs out of this incredibly large contract? You know, I'm not going to go through them, but I can give you an examples of where people put stuff in writing, but didn't happen. So I'll just say we need to rigorously police this contract. It's not been our strong suit. So I see this high profile contract as an opportunity for us really to renew our commitment to contract oversight. I will be voting in favor of this today. And I hope we can all work together and make sure the lights are on and working and that we get our money's worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Silverman. So I'm going to be voting against this, and we'll see if anybody joins me on that. But I can assure you I will wake up tomorrow morning and I will be comfortable with my vote, because I think that we are spending more money than we need to, much more money than we need to. There's been a lot of rhetoric around this contract from the executive, which has been, in my view, deliberately confusing the issue. That this is a P3 project and there's something mystical, magical about a P3 project. Not true. That there will be no risk to the district government. That is not correct. If there is a default, there will be some recourse to the district for unpaid liabilities, which would include borrowing. That there are smart features with this contract. Well, that may be true, but there could be smart features with a traditional contract. So there's nothing unique there. That there are performance requirements. Well, that is true. That is good. That could be as true with a traditional contract. That there'll be no change orders. That's a distinction without meaning, because every contract we have, there can be no change order unless the district agrees to it. And usually those change orders come from the district. So this is all rhetoric, in my view, to deliberately confuse. To me, the bottom line is this, that this contract is going to cost a lot more. And it's going to cost a lot more because of what this is about, which is the financing mechanism. That's what this contract is about, is the financing mechanism. Rather than the district going to our capital budget and financing this through an RFP where we can set forth the same scope, the same requirements, the same performance measures. Rather than that, what we're doing is we're asking that the contractor, Plenary, will borrow. They will do the upfront financing, and then we will pay them back over 15 years. And of course, that's going to cost us more. It's going to cost us more for several reasons. We're borrowing from, basically, we're letting them a private party do the financing. Even with the IRBs, they're going to be borrowing at a higher rate. So this is going to cost us more. And in my view, that is not an effective, efficient way for us to spend our money. Something I often say, that we ought to be looking at the most efficient and effective way of delivering services, in this case, streetlights. It is false to say that that the Plenary carries all the risk, because there are default provisions in the contract, not in the IRB, but in this contract, that will work against the district if there is a default. P3s, you know, there's something magical about P3s, but maybe not. And in this case, for certain, not. P3s allow innovation. Not true here. It's all specified in the bid requirements. This is really kind of, in some ways, like a sale leaseback, where the developer finances. I want to just finish by emphasizing the costs. So some of us saw some numbers that suggest that we're going to be paying something like the difference between 173 million and 309 million, which I think is like, works out to about $9 million more per year. And DDOT has challenged that. Of course, DDOT would challenge that. I tried to understand on what basis, but really it comes down to this. Let's look at the costs per streetlight. I have this graph here. Yes, the district's one of the top two orange lines in that. That's the cost per streetlight. City of Seattle, $488 per streetlight. City of Los Angeles, $542 per streetlight. City of San Antonio, $580 per streetlight. We're $2,133 per streetlight. Montgomery County, $524 per streetlight. We're $2,133 per streetlight under this contract. I don't know how long ago some of those those procurements were done. City of Chicago, which is more recent, $841 per streetlight. We're $2,133 per streetlight. This is going to cost us a lot more. In my view, this contract is embarrassing. It's an embarrassment because we're spending so much more and we're being fooled by these tricks like P3 or smart features or whatever that we can get through a traditional contract. So I'll wake up with a good conscience, feeling good about this tomorrow, however the vote goes. Councilmember Che on second round, that would be a 2-minute clock.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to call you out on just parroting the numbers and information fed to you by the current contractor and the lobbyist for that contractor. There's no basis for their numbers, and to the extent we could even get underneath them, it doesn't include the full measure of what's being provided for under this contract. So you might sleep better, but you shouldn't. You should be very restless in that recounting of what these costs are, because it's just not documented, and all you're doing is you're taking what they fed you and putting it up and showing it to us and saying that that's that. There's no basis in their numbers. But I do want to spend whatever time I have left. I don't see a clock. I have to clarify something for Councilmember White about the CBE issue. As I said, we can't do CBEs because of the federal money. But even if we did a traditional contract, we couldn't do CBEs. So that's a wash. But I want to explain something about what the commitment is here. The alternative measure that they use for the federal government, DBEs, gives preference to minority, women, and socially and economically disadvantaged individuals and businesses. So combined with the commitment of the contractor, which, by the way, was represented in the hearing, we will see local minorities getting hired and being subs, just like CBEs. But I want to make it clear that this limitation, CBE or disadvantaged business, would apply to a traditional contract also because of the federal money.
Thank you, Councilmember Che. Second round, Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you, Chairman, in your comments about we should be looking at this service through the traditional contract process. Do you have any information that would explain why we did not, particularly when we probably could still go the federal assistance system? So why do you think we're not looking at this through the traditional process?
I'll venture two reasons. One is financing and the other is what I'll call inertia. So this project was originally identified as a possible P3 project 6 years ago when we had a P3 office, because it was believed at the time that there could be revenue generating technologies that could be collated on DC streetlights. And that's what a P3 often does, is you get a product with some innovation and there's a revenue stream and it pays for the product. So it started out that way and it just continued on that trajectory. That's what I mean by inertia. And then the financing mechanism. So it's not costing us anything up front. The money is being borrowed financed by Plenary, and then we repay them over 15 years.
Yeah, and my question is really designed to speak to the surplus that we are experiencing. We could certainly use some of that money if it were on the list of items that we would want to use it for. In other words, I'm just really looking at this from the perspective of, if the issue that you have is that is costing too much, and that why didn't we consider the traditional financing way? I'm curious as to why that isn't happening. We're here at a point where we're asked to vote on this measure. Everyone wants new streetlights. Everyone wants the LEDs. Everyone wants the energy savings. And everyone wants to improve our environment. And that's what this program brings to us. So if there is a difficulty with how we finance it, then maybe that's what we really need to be dealing with.
Thank you, Councilmember. If there is nobody else, the vote is on the declaration. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Pinto?
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Silverman?
Yes.
Councilmember Silverman votes yes. Councilmember Robert White?
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Councilmember Trayon White?
Yes.
Councilmember Trayon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds?
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Che?
Yes.
Councilmember Che votes yes. Councilmember Gray?
No.
Councilmember Gray votes no. Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie is recused. Chairman Mendelson?
No.
Chairman Mendelson votes no. And Councilmember Nadeau?
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 10 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 recusal.
The declaration is approved. We have the underlying contract. Councilmember Che,
So move.
is there discussion? We probably can dispose of this by a voice vote. All those in favor of the contract say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Please record me as voting no. Councilmember Gray, how are you voting on this?
Voting no, Mr. Chairman.
Please record Mr. Gray as voting no, and please record Mr. McDuffie as recused.
So noted, Mr. Chairman.